There are places where people disappear. And then there are places where something far more disturbing happens. In the spring of 1922, an entire family was murdered inside an isolated farmhouse in southern Germany. 6 victims. No survivors, no arrests. But that's not why this case became legendary. After the murders, someone remained inside the house. Someone fed the cattle, someone cooked meals. Someone kept the fire burning for days, while 6 bodies lay only a few rooms away. More than 100 years later, the killer has never been identified. And the strangest part is, the warning signs had already begun before anyone died. Footsteps inside an empty attic, missing keys, and footprints leading toward the farmhouse, with none leading away. Tonight, we're not just asking who committed the Hinterkaifeck murders, we're asking who was already inside that farmhouse before the killings ever began. Before we continue, if you enjoy real mysteries that history still can't explain, consider subscribing. And if you enjoy documentaries like this, leaving a like really helps the channel. Now, let's return to Hinterkaifeck. Hinterkaifeck wasn't famous. It was simply an isolated farm hidden among the fields of Bavaria. The nearest village was almost a kilometer away. After sunset, there were no lights, no passing travelers, no neighbors close enough to hear a scream. Living there was Andreas Gruber, a strict, hard-working farmer with a reputation for being difficult. He lived with his wife, Cecilia, their widowed daughter, Victoria, her 7-year-old daughter, also named Cecilia, little Joseph, just 2 years old, and their new maid, Maria Baumgartner. Maria had arrived only hours before the murders. She never lived to see another sunrise. The maid before her had suddenly quit. When people asked why, she gave a chilling answer. She believed the farmhouse was haunted. Most people laughed. Years later, they stopped laughing. Days before the murders, strange things began happening. A newspaper appeared inside the house, even though no one knew where it came from. Then, a set of house keys disappeared. Soon after, Andreas Gruber started hearing footsteps, not outside, inside the attic, every night. Slow footsteps crossed the ceiling above him. He searched the attic himself. He found nothing, yet the sounds continued. Then came the discovery that truly frightened him. After fresh snowfall, he found a single trail of footprints leading from the forest straight to the farmhouse. He followed them carefully. They ended at the house. There were no footprints leading away. Someone had walked to Hinterkaifeck, but according to the snow, they had never left. Gruber told his neighbors something felt terribly wrong. One even offered him a firearm, but for reasons no one has ever understood, he never went to collect it. Just 4 days later, the silence surrounding Hinterkaifeck would become one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. No one knows exactly what happened on the night of March 31st, 1922. There were no witnesses, no survivors, only the evidence left behind. Investigators believe the victims were lured into the barn, one by one. First, Andreas Gruber, then his wife, Cecilia. Soon after, their daughter, Victoria. And finally, 7-year-old Cecilia. Each was struck with a mattock, a heavy farming tool found on the property. The attacks were sudden, brutal, and over within moments. Inside the farmhouse, Maria Baumgartner never had the chance to escape. She was killed in her bedroom. Little Joseph, Only 2 years old, Calm was murdered in his cot. By sunrise, everyone living at Hinterkaifeck was dead. But the killer wasn't finished. Days passed, yet nothing seemed unusual from a distance. Smoke still rose from the chimney, the animals could still be heard. Life appeared to continue. When neighbors finally entered the property, they found 4 bodies hidden beneath hay inside the barn. Then, inside the house, they found Maria. And finally, little Joseph. 6 victims, 1 isolated farmhouse, no witnesses, no clear motive. Police immediately realized this was unlike anything they had seen before. Then investigators noticed something that transformed a terrible murder into an unforgettable mystery. Someone had remained at Hinterkaifeck after the killings. The cattle had been fed, the cows had been milked, fresh hay had been placed in the barn. Inside the kitchen, meals had been prepared. Bread had been sliced. Dirty dishes sat on the table. Someone had been living inside the farmhouse, while the victims still lay there. Neighbors later confirmed they continued seeing smoke rising from the chimney for several days after the murders. Imagine that. Walking through silent rooms, preparing food, sleeping at night, knowing exactly what was hidden only a few steps away. Who could do something like that? And perhaps the most disturbing question, why stay at all? The investigation quickly became one of Germany's most difficult murder cases. Police questioned more than 100 people, neighbors, travelers, former employees, anyone who might have known the Gruber family. Several suspects appeared promising. Some had personal conflicts with Andreas Gruber. Others were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. A few even confessed. But every confession eventually fell apart. None matched the evidence. Investigators later recovered the suspected murder weapon, hidden beneath the farmhouse floor. Why leave it behind? Another question, without an answer. Over the decades, when the case was reopened several times, modern investigators reviewed the surviving evidence. Historians examined forgotten records. But time had already erased too much. Witnesses died, evidence disappeared, and the truth slowly disappeared with them. More than 100 years later, no theory explains everything. Some believe the murders were an act of revenge. Andreas Gruber had enemies, but none could ever be linked to the crime. Others suggested robbery. Yet money remained inside the farmhouse. Valuable belongings were never taken. Then there is the theory that refuses to die. Someone had already been living inside the attic, watching, waiting, learning the family's routine. It would explain the footsteps, the missing keys, the sounds above the ceiling, and the footprints. That led to the farmhouse, but never away. There has never been proof, only possibilities. Today, Hinterkaifeck no longer exists. The farmhouse was demolished years after the murders. Nothing remains except open fields and silence. Yet one question still refuses to disappear. Not who committed the murders, but why the killer stayed. Why feed the animals? Why cook meals? Why keep the fire burning? Whatever happened at Hinterkaifeck, someone walked into that farmhouse. 6 people never walked out, and whoever was responsible vanished into history. Perhaps the truth was buried with the victims, perhaps someone carried it to their grave, or perhaps the answer has been sitting in front of us all along, hidden inside a detail everyone overlooked. We'll probably never know. If you enjoyed this documentary, consider subscribing to MOLODIX. Every week we explore real mysteries that history has never fully explained. And now, I want to hear your theory. Who do you think was inside Hinterkaifeck? Leave your answer in the comments. I read everyone. Until next time, stay curious, stay unsettled, and remember, some mysteries aren't solved, they simply survive.